listen to you all evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this evening's service. I know many of you. I'm Janet Bush. I'm the minister of the Unitarian Society of Northampton and Florence, and I'm very glad that you are here. As we gather to remember, I will light the chalice as a flame of sharing. As we strive to make sense, let it be a flame of enlightenment. And as we seek comfort, let it be a flame of hope. Again, welcome. I know that some of you have come here tonight to remember someone who's died this past year or longer ago. You may be here because you've been going through a hard time, have suffered other kinds of losses, and we need opportunities like this one for sharing together and for receiving acknowledgement of our losses from other people. It's good to come together and to allow ourselves to feel our feelings. In a few minutes, there will be an opportunity to light a candle. And I'll give you a chance. Lori is going to help me with this, and you'll be able to either share the person's name yourself, or if you want to put it in the chat and we can read the person's name for you, we can do that as well. The reading I have is from the poet Jane Kenyon. I'm sure it's familiar to many of you. It's called Otherwise. I got out of bed on two strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birch wood. All morning I did the work I love. At noon I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed in a room with paintings on the walls and planned another day just like this day. But one day I know it will be otherwise. One day I know it will be otherwise. So Jane Kenyon died of leukemia in 1995, which was a month before her 48th birthday. She was married to the poet Donald Hall, who was about 20 years her senior, and they lived in a New Hampshire farmhouse that had been in his family for generations. And he had had a bout with cancer years previously, and I think she wrote that poem thinking about his difficulty and his illness and then his recovery. One day I know it will be otherwise. Otherwise is the inevitability of illness and death, and it has been so present in our lives for the past 9 months. Whether or not we have lost someone to COVID-19, we almost certainly know others who have. And we are constantly reminded every day of the deaths of people we don't know. In my family, my Aunt Fran died just a few weeks ago. She died of failing health in old age. My mother died this past summer. My mother was 95, and she had been at Linda Manor, which is the local nursing home, on the nursing home wing for 3 years. And I saw her a couple times a week, more often in the summer. She had been a history professor, one of the trailblazing post-war women who had a job outside the home and sort of defied social expectations and social norms for people of her generation, for women of her generation, when they were expected to confine themselves to housework and child raising. My mother's memory began to fail her when she was in her late 80s. She lost the ability to retain what she read, and she couldn't follow a movie or a TV show. For the first few years, she was just enamored with, in love with Downton Abbey. But by the last season, she couldn't follow it at all because she couldn't remember who was who or follow the shifts from scene to scene. She forgot most of the history that she had taught. But to the end, she did remember her children and her grandchildren, and she remembered most of her friends. She retained her sense of dignity and her sense of humor. She was happy when one of her kids would visit, or occasionally an old friend from her church in the Boston area came. She was also really competitive, and she loved beating my brother-in-law in dominoes. Her plan, and this was her competitiveness, was to outlive her father in the sense that she wanted to be older than he was when he died at her death. Well, she didn't make it because he lasted until 98. And she often said, it was one of those things she said over and over again. She said, getting old is the pits, but the alternative is worse. So her death certificate says that she died of end-stage dementia. And I say she died of bafflement and isolation. I say she lost her will to live and gave up. For weeks before people knew better what was and wasn't an effective way to keep people safe, residents were confined to their rooms. She didn't have a window. When restrictions lifted some and they were allowed back in the common area, I could see her distress. When I visited, standing on the patio, was outside in the cold, close to the glass door, looking in, waving at her. Why was I standing there? Why didn't they let me in? Why was somebody handing her a phone? From mid-March until the day before she died, I saw her in person only once. And that was around mid-June. We sat on the patio. We were 6 feet apart. We weren't allowed to touch. And she just had her head down and was non-responsive. She died a few weeks later. Old age was still the pits, but the alternative was no longer worse. This is a hard, hard time. Disenfranchised grief is a term for grief that goes unacknowledged or isn't validated according to expected social norms. And that makes it especially hard to process and work through. Anyone who's estranged from their family, for example, can experience disenfranchised grief when a family member dies. I knew a gay man who was close to his mother-in-law, but who was barred from attending her funeral. His husband was the only son, the oldest. It was a very conservative Christian Orthodox family, and the sisters did not accept their relationship, and the son-in-law was barred from all of the family celebrations and all of the family mourning. He was denied the comfort of participating in the rituals and sharing his own sorrow for his mother-in-law was giving him. So right now, the normal rituals of shared mourning, the wakes, the funerals, the memorial gatherings, they're curtailed or delayed or abandoned completely. People can't even give you a hug. And many, 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 many people are suffering from forms of disenfranchised grief. Grief that is made more complicated and harder by these circumstances. And if you're feeling that because you've lost someone in the last 9 months, it's real. You may also be mourning the people you will miss seeing this holiday season. We are in a time when grief will surface no matter who we are. And we are here together. We decided that we didn't know when it was going to start snowing, so we would have liked to be in the sanctuary. I know for those of you who are regular attendees in our congregation, it's a real comfort. People tell me it's a real comfort to see the sanctuary. So I have very mixed feelings about doing it this way, but we thought since we didn't know when the snow would start, we thought it made sense to plan to do it like this. So we are here together on screen, yes, apart, yes, but together nonetheless. We're here to bear witness to each other's losses and sorrows, and also to offer comfort to one another. So now I invite you to sing this song with me. Although we won't hear each other, we'll only hear Let Me Play. It's familiar to some of you and it's easy to catch on. The song is Comfort Me. And the first verse is comfort me, my soul. Comfort me, my soul. So please sing if you want to sing. And because we'll all remain muted because of course singing and playing together get all out of sync on Zoom. But let's sing together anyway. Comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, my soul.
Lemmy's sound is completely off.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Kathy? We've lost you.
Okay.
Lynn.
He's
No,
back.
that was better.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sing with me. Sing with me, my soul. Sing with me, my soul. Sing with me. Sing with me. Pray with me, my soul. Pray with me. Pray with me. Pray with me. Comfort, comfort, comfort me, O my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, O my soul. Hum it to yourself. And now Lori's going to help as we light candles. As we light candles for the people we mourn and want to remember. And I think what we're going to do is that I suggest you, well, Lori will use gallery view. And she's just going to ask you one by one, would you like to light a candle? And you can either, if your videos can be on, turn your videos back on. I don't think we turned them off. Just nod if you want to, or just say the name of the person and I'll light a candle for that person. And if you want, and if you don't want to say anything, that's fine. And then I'll light a candle in silence, just to acknowledge whatever's on your heart.
I'll start. Can you light a candle for Rosalind Loisel, my stepmother, who died May 22nd this year? And then I think I'll just go around my screen. Kathy, do you want to have a candle lit? Henry?
There we go. I'd like to mention three people quickly. My son Patrick died 5 years ago, come February 22nd. And then I was just speaking to a dear friend today, and his father, who I knew very well, and his wife, who I also knew very well, died of COVID in the last 2 months. And he hadn't been returning my calls because of what he was going through. And I just feel so badly. He couldn't say goodbye to his wife. He couldn't hold her hand. So that would be Patrick, Mark, and Alberta.
Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Patty,
I'd like to light a candle for my husband, Richard, who died of COVID at the Soldiers' Home in March and whose birthday was yesterday.
Thank you, Patty.
Jan Netler,
Well, I want to remember 2 people. One is my cousin Frank, who died this year. And the other is, in the Jewish religion, we have a yahrzeit, which is the annual remembrance of a death. And this past week was my mother's yahrzeit. She died 30 years ago.
thanks, Jan. Tom Wartenberg,
I'd like to mention my brother, Dan Wartenberg, who died of early onset Alzheimer's this past September. And he was 68.
thanks, Tom. Corky and David.
Sorry. This is my first Christmas without my mother, Sonia Hulswit, who died also at Linda Manor in January. David? No.
Evelyn? You have to unmute. Can you help her, Kathy?
Lori, come back to her.
Okay, I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. We can hear you now.
Okay. I'm remembering 4 people, 2 high school classmates who have died during the year. My cousin's husband, who was a pretty special guy, and he died back in the spring. And more recently, a friend from our bed and breakfast days, a person we liked very much. And it's been a hard year.
Thank you. Kamala?
I'd like to remember my mother-in-law, Lucy's mother, who died a year ago yesterday.
On here, it says unmute.
Marjorie Baruch.
Thank you. And I just realized I said your name wrong. Kamala. Lemmy. I don't know.
I'd like to light a candle for my piano teacher, Nadine Shank, who died this year.
Thank you. Reese?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I'd like to just remember 3 people specifically. My brother, who died 2 years ago, still very hard. And this past year, my aunt Kay Black died actually from a complication from post-polio infection, which is a very long story, but she was a remarkable woman. And my other aunt, Audrey Leaf, both very different, very wonderful women who were big part of my life.
Thank you. Does your companion want to?
George, do you want to?
No.
Okay.
Hey, yeah.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you. Emily and Marisol? Okay. Judy?
So this is my candle that I've lit for Helen Armstrong, my dear beloved.
Thank you. It's a beautiful candle. Laura?
Yes, if you'd light a candle for my cousin, Glory Sumka Stack, who, after a difficult operation in January, was left on a ventilator, and she died in early August, and her birthday would have been Friday, the 18th. So I'm thinking of her at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Kit? Can you unmute yourself? Oh, you did it and then you muted yourself.
Okay. Well, my sister died of ovarian cancer, and she was in the hospital, and then she came home and no pain at all. She just took some aspirin and then she passed. So it was very peaceful. And then my best friend, or one of my best friends from growing up, Sally Ramsden, died, and she had kidney disease. She had dialysis all the time. And she kept herself alive until her husband didn't recognize her anymore. And then she let go on her birthday.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to write something in the chat, we can read it after. Deborah? You need to unmute, Deb.
I'd like to light a candle for my son, Patrick, and my mother, Patricia.
Thank you. Joan?
Thank you. I'd like to light a candle for my mentor, Jan, and who died last at the end of the summer, and for an old family friend who died 2 days ago. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Pamela?
I'd like to light a candle for Kavi, who is an extended family member who passed away today, actually, and suffered from a number of health issues, including cancer and COVID.
Thank you. And Sally? Oh, can you unmute, Sally?
Usually at these yearly loss services, I talk about the hardest tragedy of my family, which happened a long time ago, 21 years ago. The amount of time diminishes into the air because he was murdered by a stranger, my oldest child. But this year I want to name something that's an equal loss that I find it hard to talk about. My youngest child is my daughter, Her name is Elizabeth Weiss, and she's alive. But she has, sometimes I use the word divorced. She has divorced first me, and then sometime later she divorced her living brother and his wife that she was close to, and her cousin and her aunt, my sister. So it's now been 6.5 years that I have not heard from her. Luckily, she keeps her email and her phone the same for professional reasons, so I can communicate with her, but sometimes it's even hard to keep that up because it's very hard to lose your daughter in that way, and the daughter will never respond. I wouldn't mind if she chewed me out or anything else, but silence is very difficult. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about this other loss, which is something incomprehensible to me.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
for sharing.
And Reese's Uncle George changed his mind.
What would you like to say, Uncle George?
I would just like to say that I miss Audrey Leaf very much. And never mind. Never mind.
Sure.
Okay.
You sure?
Yeah.
Thank you. And because the screen sometimes moves around, did I miss anybody who wanted to share a name? Okay, and Janet, I think you haven't gone.
Yeah, I'll light a candle for my mother, Alice, and my Aunt Fran. And then I'll light a final candle for all the names we didn't speak and for the sorrows in our hearts and for the hope and comfort that we can bring.
Actually, we have a couple names in the chat, Janet.
Okay.
So Jamie Quintana, who died earlier, Jamie Quintana,
Oh, James, yes.
who died earlier this month, and Ari Bork, who died last spring. And Aunt Barbara Pearson is in hospice care right now.
I think it's Jaime.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I'm just going to dim the lights for a minute and let's take a moment together in silence.
Janet, there's a request in the chat if we could light a candle for all the people who died of COVID.
Yes, that's a good idea. We have lit these candles for our families, our loved ones, our friends, for those who are near and those from whom we feel an unwanted distance, and for the many, many people we do not know, but whose loss affects us. For those whose lives are vulnerable, for our own vulnerable hearts, for all those we have lost, known and unknown, for the suffering we've experienced, for a planet torn by pain, we light candles in hope, we light candles for healing. Let's let the candles symbolize our grief, which is the most human response to loss. To symbolize the courage we need in the face of change and the memories that we will always carry. And may their light again symbolize hope and the promise that we must believe lives in the days and months to come. May you find help and comfort. May you know kindness. And may you feel the blessings of the season and have them go with you. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Amen. And go in peace. The good news is no one has to drive home in the cold. Thank you all.
That was beautiful.
It
Thank
was
you.
very nice. Thank you for doing this, Janet.
Mhm. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Lemmy.
Nice music.
Yeah, it's great music.
It's snowing.
Bye.
Really?
Yeah.
See, we don't have to, and Lemmy and Lori and I don't have to drive home in the snow either, so that's good.
Nice to see you so close up and personal, Lemmy, without a mask.
Yeah, you've never seen him without a mask, have you?
That's right.
He has a face.
There you are. Yay!
Yeah. Janet, I loved the setting that you had. It was more intimate and with that beautiful painting there behind you. I
Okay.
thought this was a lovely setting.
Oh, good.
And
Okay. Well, Lemmy and I were just talking yesterday about how, it could happen again, so we might as well practice.
it could happen again, I guess.
It could happen again this winter, that we have to
Yeah.
hunt. So
I don't know. There was an intimacy about this format that is different. If we're all sitting in pews face forward, we were all looking at each other in the face all the time.
That's right.
well, that's the thing about the Zoom meeting. That's a lovely part of the Zoom meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Part of it. We get to see each other. People get to see each other.
And see each other maskless, which is such a treat.
Yeah.
No problem identifying who was who. Well done. Very soothing for the spirit.
It's so important, and we don't probably do it enough to say goodbye and to honor people who are not with us. I mean, I don't know.
We need our rituals.
We do. That's what I mean. Yeah. We need
Yep.
to express those feelings.
Talking to I forget who I was talking with in the congregation, somebody recently, and that's where that connection, this is disenfranchised grief. It really is. You can't mourn in the appropriate way. Tom Wartenberg, it was lovely to see you, even though I didn't see you. I'm glad to know you're here.
I'm going to say goodnight.
Okay.
I'm going to say goodnight.
All right. Ms. Kathy Lilly.
I'll wait until everyone goes. They'll turn it off.
Okay. All right. I think we're good.
Okay. Good night, all.
All right. Good night, all.
Sally.
Thanks, Sally.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Tom. Nice sweater.
Bye.
I just wanted to.
She said nice sweater.
Thank you.